that I was scheduled to go into a meeting and I was going to get beat up real bad. Not killed, but beat up where they'd break my arms, legs, a serious beating.
So, here we go again. Sammy, your captain and mentor, Todd Aurello, when he was a soldier, he served under Tommy Rava in the 1950s and then later in the 1960s under Peter P.T. Pumps Ferrara. Did he ever talk about his previous captains much to you?
He did, but certain things he left out, and he's not supposed to tell me, according to Cosa Nostra. I found out later that when right after the what's his name?
Anastasia.
Right after Anastasia was killed, Tommy Rava was his main guy. He had a big crew, and he was going to try and take over. His crew was Neil Della Croce, Fat Andy, Tony Lee, My Totto, um, Jimmy Brown, a bunch of guys were in his crew. And he always had the hots to kill Carlo Gambino. Carlo Gambino was real friendly with My Totto, and Carlo Gambino convinced Totto to kill Tommy Rava, and he did. He killed Tommy Rava and his bodyguard. They both disappeared someplace in Florida, and he became super, super close with Carlo Gambino. Now, I didn't know that in the beginning. I found out after a while. And some of the stories were interesting because he would talk to me when I switched over. Uh, when I switched over from the Colombo family for my problems with them, the heads of the family spoke, and I was transferred to the Gambino family. So when I was put with Tato, right after a couple of days, he took me up to Ocean Parkway, where Carlo Gambino had an apartment. He lived in Long Island, but he had an apartment in Brooklyn. And I went to Ocean Parkway with him. I met Carlo Gambino. Carlo Gambino introduced himself and said, "Is this the kid, Sammy?" And Tato said yes. And he says, "You got a good reputation. Be a good boy. You're going to be under Tato. He's going to be your mentor. Stay with him." And I did. And I had a lot of conversations with Tato. He always had me in the backyard with him when he'd have people there, just to make me listen and hear and learn. And when nobody was around, we would sit in the backyard too, and he would talk to me about certain things. The Kennedy hit, Marilyn Monroe, the murder of Marilyn Monroe. I don't want to get into detail with it because I'm doing this on my scripted show, but a lot of conversations like that. And I've come to learn over the years that Tato was extremely close. He was Carlo Gambino's right hand man. He had a fairly big crew. Some of the guys who they took from Tommy Rava were with him. One of them, Neil Della Croce, of course, he made him his underboss. So war never erupted. He was smart about how he did things. And so, yeah, I was really, really close with him, and he was a powerhouse. And that's how Tommy Rava, a lot of people don't know that, was killed by him. There was a powerful, powerful guy, Carmine Mendoza, and he was a cooperator. Nobody knew about it.
Yeah.
Later on, 302s and stuff like that, it was obvious to me. He was the guy who ratted. He actually ratted on Tato about the hit. Why Tato didn't get pinched is that the FBI felt they would have had to expose Carmine Mendoza, and they didn't want to. He was a very powerful cooperator, so they just let the thing go. So that's a little bit of a story on Tato and me.
It's my understanding that there were still rumors about Lombardozzi being an informant throughout like the 1960s and 70s. Did you ever hear anything like that at all about him?
There was a little story about it. I think Carmine Lemondozzi, and I was with him and his wife. I was with me and my wife. We were down in Florida with a few people, Joey Cigars and a bunch of people. And his wife brought it up and she laughed about it. Could you believe they once said that he was an informant? And they both laughed and they blew it off. And I thought it was funny too. He was a powerhouse, very well known, pretty dangerous guy himself, very, very wealthy guy. Um, I heard things like that, but it was just more or less made into a joke. So I never believed it. But when I saw the 302s and that he ratted Totto out, um, there's a lot of evidence that he was an informant.
I've got a list of names of some soldiers who were in Toddo's crew alongside yourself. If I give you their names, would you confirm that they were in the crew and then give me a couple of lines about what you thought about them?
Sure.
So, first up, we've got three brothers who were sons of a Gambino mobster called Andrew Torregrossa, who died in 1973. So, the first son was John Torregrossa. Do you remember him at all?
Well, I remember one of the Terra Grosses. I don't know which one it was. They owned a funeral home, and I think it was the father, the oldest one. They had a funeral home in
Andrew
Brooklyn.
Sr.
Yes, and something came out about one of his sons was an informant, and he asked for mercy not to kill the kid. And the decision that came down was the kid recanted. He did whatever he was told to do. And Terragrossa was taken down as a captain, number one. And number two, everyone was told never to use that funeral parlor again and never have any contact with the Terragrossas whatsoever. He was banned from the family. So that's all I really know about the Terra Grosses. It was a little bit before my time, but again, sitting in the backyard with Totto, I heard the story about it.
Yeah, so the three sons were John, Andrew Jr., and Angelo, but you can't remember which one potentially was the informant.
No, no, I didn't know anything about them. I just remember hearing that story. I remember there was a funeral parlor and everybody was told not to use it.
Okay. And obviously, some sources state, I think it even says in your book, that Frankie DeChico's father, Vincent Boozy DeChico, was he in Toddo's crew?
Yes, yes. Boozy was with a good old guy. I mean, a real tough guy himself, good guy. Um, and I got a lot of stories with Boozy, a lot of funny stories and some stories. I mean, he was a great guy. He had made Frankie DeChico, and one time I remember he was asked, because a lot of us don't want to make our sons, and he gave an explanation. He said, normally I wouldn't make my son, but my son Frankie is a hoodlum. He's in the street. He's a tough guy. He does things. The only way for me to control him is to make him, and he starts listening to the rules and me, and understands Cosa Nostra, and it would straighten him out. He felt if he didn't do that, he would just run around, get himself in trouble, and he made the right decision. Frankie was a tough guy, no doubt about it, and it was the right decision. I'll tell you a little story about him as well. Um, Frankie DeChico had my guy Joe, the old man Joe Peruta, and he came over with me. He was with me. He was with Totto Peruta first, then he came to me. He was with me always, and they were standing on Bath Avenue, and Boozy pulled up with a brand new Cadillac, canary yellow, white top, white interior, and Peruta went over and said, "Wow, "What a beautiful car, Boozy. You want to sell it?" And he says, "I just bought it from Pentankin Cadillac. I just walked out of the showroom with it. I don't want to sell it." So everybody laughed, thought it was funny. And then Boozy said, "Listen, I'm going to the track tonight. You want to come?" And they met at night. Of course, Peruta loved the horses as well. And he gave him the keys. He said, "Here, you drive." So he was driving, and when they were going to get off the highway, there's that circular thing, and it was going pretty fast. He hit the side. The car bounced around, hit the walls, and just literally exploded. And when it stopped, steam was coming out of the top. He looked at Boozy. Boozy's glasses were way down below his nose, bleeding from the nose. And Peruta said, "Boozy, you okay?" And he says, "Yeah, I think I'm okay. I think I broke my nose." He says, "Do you want to sell the car now?" And everybody, like, just when they heard that story, busted out laughing. That's the definition of Boozy and Peruta. They were good guys, really. They joke a lot, but they were tough guys. And so Boozy was a good guy, a real good guy.
Okay, so obviously another individual who was in Toddo's crew was Charlie, his son, who was inducted around a similar time to yourself. Is that right? What was Charlie like?
Yes, a good guy. I grew up with him all my life. A tough kid too, but a little spoiled. He had a lot of money, and he's the type of guy. No matter what he did, he investigated it and tried to do it the best way possible. I remember when we were kids. I mean, you're talking 12, 13 years old, whatever, 14. We go snorkeling in the ocean, and you have this little thing sticking up, a straw or whatever, and you could breathe while you're underwater. If you go too deep, you'll drown. So we saw a guy coming down, and he had the black suit, the snorkel stuff, the tank on his back. And when he took the thing down, it was Charlie Boy. So his father and them, they had a lot of money. So he came down fully equipped to snorkel with, it was funny. But that's Charlie Boy. But he was a great guy. I had a game one time, and we caught some people, a mechanic trying to steal and stuff like that. He hit the guy so fucking hard. I mean, he busted his whole face open. He was so mad that the guy tried to rob us, and he was a great guy. They used to break his balls a little bit about he didn't do a piece of work. He didn't kill somebody. Now, when your father's a heavyweight captain like that, you don't have to. And Toddo, it's his son. He kept him away from those things as much as humanly possible. After the Castellano hit, when I took over the crew, I became a captain. Toddo was under me, so was Charlie Boy. And I told Charlie, I said, "Listen, bro, you never did a piece of work. People comment about it, some guys, I don't blame, I know you're a tough guy. I love you. We grew up together. But to shut them the fuck up, I got a piece of work. Do you want to come on it with me? I'm giving you an option." And he says, "Of course, Sammy. If you need me, I'm with you." And he came on a piece of work, did everything he was supposed to do. And I just told people, you ever open your fucking mouth about him again? He did work. He did work with me. And I wanted to make him, not have that label. I didn't make him the shooter, but he did exactly what I told him to do. He did it. I wasn't even there. I put him with a crew, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. So that was Charlie Boy. I'll tell you another thing. Years later, after I cooperated and they sent a team down, Peter Gotti became the boss, and they sent a team down to kill me. They were having trouble with it. They were afraid of me, afraid to come near me. And they wanted somebody who was going to be a long shot. Now, Charlie Boy was a hunter, like a great white hunter. He went for deer, antelope, bear, different trips he would go away on. He was a great shot. So they asked him to come down and be on the hit. He told Peter Gotti, who was now the boss, to go fuck himself. That he wouldn't go. He loved me. and he wouldn't be on the hit. Now, telling a boss to that, something like that, is usually a death penalty. He did it anyway. He didn't get killed for it. He didn't get punished. Only because Peter Gotti was a jerk off. He wasn't a legitimate boss. So that's one of the stories. And his father, when I cooperated, must have been heartbroken, I know. But never, ever went against me or said anything against me. He actually blamed John Gotti. He died years later. All them years later, he never badmouthed me or did anything against me. And I guess Charlie felt the same exact way.
Another name linked with Toddo's crew was a guy called John Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah, the old man Rizzo. Yeah, of course. I did a lot of things with him when I wasn't in the Gambino family. He was a jeweler down New York, and he'd give us tips about scores, people carrying jewelry and stuff like that. And many, many robberies we did. Me, my Gumbada alley boy, we would go down and do scores on his tips. When I got busted for a double murder, he tried to help us, me and my Gumbada. He gave us a little luncheonette. We got it for dirt cheap. Before we had a chance to pay for it, he paid for it, gave it to us free. And we ran this little luncheonette. There's a lot of stories based around that luncheonette. But he was a good guy. He was the guy who, when I went to kill my boss Shorty's brother, Ralph Spiro, he was the guy who found out with Louis Melito, was with the Gambinos, he was with him, that I was scheduled to go into a meeting and I was going to get beat up real bad. Not killed, but beat up, where they'd break my arms, legs, a serious beating. And he advised me not to go. I told him I had to go. These are my people. Where would I go? What do you want me to run away? I have to go. And he said, let me come with you. He brought him and Louis Melito. It was about a woman. It was a bullshit story. He came down. He talked with Shorty. And he told Shorty, I was in the bar that night. What they're accusing Sammy of is total bullshit. And if you don't believe me, Shorty, Louis Melito's in the car. He was there. His Gumbada alley boy was there. He's with the Genovese family. Mikey Mozzarella was there. He was with the Colombo people. I could bring every one of them to you who was there that night. The story is not true. And Shorty says, I had a feeling that this kid didn't do this. He told me, Sammy, go home. I went home. The next message I got was to go out. I was going to meet Toddo. I didn't know Toddo. I knew Charlie Boy, who was his father. And I went and met Toddo. He took me downtown Carroll Street where they hung out. Alley Boy Persico Sr. was there. They gave me right for wanting to kill Ralph Spiro. He told a lie to my wife about the situation. He was trying to get me killed. And it didn't work. It backfired. But I got wrong because when I heard this from my wife, I got a gun, went directly to his house, rang the bell. His wife came to the door. I asked for Ralph. She said he wasn't there. When I went to turn around to walk away, she saw I had a gun in my hand. They knew I was going to kill him. And they asked me that question. Said me, were you going to kill him right at the door? And I said, I was so hot. Yes, I was. Killing him in front of his wife and his children right in his house, you're getting wrong for that. We're not going to kill you because you were right on the overall thing. He lied about you. We can't kill him because he's Shorty's brother. So we're going to transfer you. The Gambinos spoke for you. We're going to release you and put you with the Gambinos. The guy who took you down here, Toddo, you're going to be with him. He's a beautiful man. We're releasing you with no restrictions, number one, and you're always going to be our friend. You just have to promise us that you're not going to kill Ralph Spiro. Of course, I promised them I never would. I never did. And I left. That's how I got over to the Gambino family, and I started with Toddo.
Another couple of names that I have potentially linked with Toddo's crew, a guy called Nicholas Russo. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, Nicky Russo. and there was another guy, Pal Joey. They were under Totto. They were in Jersey and Trenton. I went and see them a few times. I knew who they were. They would come down to see Totto. Um, there's a whole thing exploded with them. They met this guy, Johnny Keys. There was a war in Philadelphia. The whole commission was against Johnny Keys. Half of the family in Philadelphia was against him. They couldn't kill him, and a war erupted. Guys were being killed on both sides. And they met him by accident. They bumped into him in a restaurant. They were both old timers, and they chatted a little bit. Nothing about the war, but they blamed Castellano for knowing about the war. He denied it, and they told him, "Well, two of you guys meet with him, then you got the hit." That's how the Gambinos got the hit to take out Johnny Keys. It's a long story. I'm involved in that. I can't discuss it too much further because this is going in my scripted show. And yes, they were both with Totto. They were both from Trenton. I did work with them a number of times.
And what about Louis Giardina?
Louis Giardina, I worked with him too. He was the head of the laborers union. He actually controlled the laborers union. He put his daughter in as a secretary. He put his son in, who was a lawyer, to represent the union. He completely controlled that union. And I dealt with him a number of times when I was dealing with construction. So that's what he was. He was a made guy. I'm not sure. I don't think he was a captain, but he was a made guy in the family. And he controlled the laborers union.
Was he in Toddo's crew or not?
No, I don't think he was with Totto's crew. I'm trying to think what crew he came out of. I think maybe Mario Triana. I believe he was with his crew. Yeah, I think he was.
So going back to Toddo, in your opinion, what attributes did he have which made him a good captain?
He was a good man. He was a tough guy, but he never used that power. He helped so many people that I know of. He was fair with everybody. Like he hated Jimmy Brown. He wouldn't talk with him much. I loved Frankie the Chico. He liked Boozy, loved Boozy. So he was a good man. And I'll give you an example. When he was, like more or less training me, I didn't know it as training. I just would sit with him and talk. And he would take me in the backyard when he had a meeting. And I would sit there. He'd tell me, just be quiet and listen. And he'd have a meeting with somebody and say, you could talk in front of Sammy. It's okay. And he had so many meetings and talked to me. A couple of times I said, Totto, you're not educated like I'm not educated. I mean, but you always seem to be right about things. How is that? He said, they call that wisdom. I've heard things over and over, listened to people's problems over and over and over again for years. He said, I'll give you an example. Somebody once asked me, pointed to a roof right across the street, that he was going to jump off that roof, do a tumble sauce. And I said, okay. He did. He broke his leg. He hurt his spine. Another guy did it. I told him, I don't think it's such a good idea. He broke his ankle. This happened, that happened. By the third guy, I would tell him, listen, don't do that. And tell him everything that's going to happen to him. And that's how you're right. Listening to things and knowing and common sense, putting all those things together. He says, it made me understand things. He had a big, big factory. They would bring cigarettes from the South. They weren't paying tax, so you could buy them real cheap. And in New York, they were taxed, so it was almost double the price. So they would buy cigarettes in South Carolina, I believe it was, and drive them up, bring them to New York, and sell them like swag. People would buy them real cheap. He was selling them like crazy. It was like a big warehouse. Cars would go in and out, trucks, people, mothers would come by and buy 2, 3 cons of cigarettes. It was crazy. And he wanted to sell it. So I asked him, I said, Todd, why do you want to sell it? It's a gold mine. He said, Sammy, everything has a time and its place. I made a ton of money with this. The Colombo people want to buy it for a good number. Sooner or later, this is going to explode. I'm going to get pinched. So I want to just get rid of it. I made enough. Maybe somebody else could want to earn with it. They could do it. The Colombo people took it. 3 months later, they got busted. He was right again. He had the smarts to say, I'm not going to keep doing this until I get arrested. I got away with it. I bribed cops. I did this and that and the other thing. I made a ton of money. It's time to walk away. So he was a guy like that. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me, we use violence in this family just like the Colombos. Not like them, but we use it as a last resort. Don't always hurt somebody or kill somebody right away. Listen to both sides of a story. Someplace in the middle there's the truth. And take your time. You may change your mind. If you believe that the person has to get hurt, then you do it. But you don't want to hurt somebody and 2 months later say, oh, I fucked up, I did this, and I was wrong. I should have never did that. He said, just as a last resort, you use violence. So I heard that, and I stuck with that most of my life. So a lot of things, Toddo was a great guy. And look, after I cooperated, the proof is in the pudding. He never went against me. Now, he should have been embarrassed. He made me. He wasn't embarrassed. He said, I loved him. He was like a son to me. He was Cosa Nostra through and through. John Gotti betrayed him, and he flipped. I don't fucking blame him. And he took that to his grave. And his son took that where he refused to fucking hit. So I found nothing ever. He was always behind me no matter what I did. I stole tires at a double murder case, stealing tires with Kumbada Alley Boy. And he was telling people, buy the fucking tires. Well, I just bought them. I don't give a fuck. Buy another set. Buy it off him. The kid is trying to fucking make money to pay his lawyer. Buy them. He made everybody buy tires. I mean, he was always there to have a helping hand. Always there in a loving and caring way. Cared about my family. He cared about everybody. I mean, and so many people. He was a good father to his children. He was a good husband to his wife. He cheated a little bit. He had a gumada, but a lot of us did that. But other than that, I mean, the guy was, I find nothing but love for him.
So you mentioned earlier that Toddo had a close relationship with Carlo Gambino. Did he have a good relationship with Paul Castellano? What did you think of him?
He did. He had a good relationship with Paul Castellano. We went back and forth a bunch of times to him for things when I started my construction businesses and I had trouble with unions. Paul got very interested in me, started using me. He used me for doing work. And Toddo was always there. Toddo was very strong with him. Toddo brought up a story one time, originally, when they wanted to kill Carlo Gambino. And Paul was the guy who actually saved Carlo Gambino. Toddo loved Carlo Gambino. And I don't think he loved Paul, but he liked him and respected him. He was a business guy, but he said he won't hesitate, to give an order to kill. But he's a guy who's got to listen with both ears and think about it, and whatever. But I think he had a lot more love for Carlo Gambino. But he liked Paul. I never heard him saying something bad about him.
So when you became involved in the plot to kill Paul Castellano, did you ever for a second think about consulting Toddo about it or not?
Well, I thought about it, but my thoughts were I wanted to keep him out of it. I knew there would be a war erupt, and I knew they would go after the players who were involved. If there was a war, we knew there's, 5 families. So there's our family, there's 4 other families on the commission. He was hooked up in Sicily. He was close to the Irish Westies and stuff. So I knew there'd be a war, and I wanted to leave him out of this war. That was my concern. I knew he wouldn't go along with it. He straight up goes in Nostra. We were breaking the rule. That's not something he would have been good with. Neil wouldn't give us permission because even though he didn't like Paul, the rule was not to kill a boss without permission from the commission. So Neil was against it. I knew Tyler would be against it. And I just wanted his name and everything left out. So when the war came on, he was clean. After it was done, I was in a car with Toto, and he obviously knew Paul was killed. And I was in the car. I didn't say nothing to him. And he looked at me and he said, these guys, whoever did this, broke the golden rule. There's going to be a war over this. You could almost bank on it. I had told him, I said, Toto, don't worry about it. I got you. And he looked at me, he hesitated, but he looked at me in a little bit of a strange way. And he said, you got me? I said, yeah. I would never make anybody hurt you. He shook his head and he said, were you involved? And that's the first time I told him, yes, I was. And he said, Sammy, don't trust anybody from this point on. Nobody. They're going to kill the people who are involved. And I want to step down. I said, why do you want to step down? You're okay. I'm going to be a captain anyway. We made decisions. John's is going to be the boss. Frankie's going to be the underboss. I'm going to be a captain and eventually become the consigliere of the family. He said, no, it's you guys. I want to step down. Tell them, John and Frankie, I want a meeting and I want to step down. I don't want to be part of this. I knew he would feel like that because he loved Goes in Austria. He respected Goes in Austria. And I made an appointment for him. He met with John Gotti and Frankie DeChico without me. And he told them he wanted to step down. And they said, okay. Frankie liked him as well. And he said, do you want to be with us with the commission, with the administration? And he said, no. I would like to ask for a favor. Whatever you want, Toto. He says, I would like to step down. I'd like Sammy to take over my crew as a captain. And I want to be with him, under him. And they said, okay, if that's what you want, no problem. And they got in touch with me. They told me what it was. Then Frankie, I believe it was, met with Toto and me. And he said, Sammy is now your Gabardine, meaning I was his captain now. Toto is in your crew. He's a friend of ours. You need to be formally introduced. We were. Toto took me back to the crew and started introducing me to everybody as the new Gabardine. His son first, and then other guys everybody who was in his crew. And but I always treated him like a king. When he came to tallies, I would tell Charlie, when your father wants to come to tallies, when I'm having my meetings, pick him up and take him there. And I told my guys, I would sit at the head of a table. When Toto comes in, I'm going to sit on his side. I want him sitting in my chair. I always want him sitting there. And when he came in, he said, no, Sammy, that's your chair now. No, it's not. Sit there. I'll sit on your side. And I wanted to show everybody that how much I loved and respected this man. The position didn't mean nothing to me when it came to him. So that's what we did. And he came there quite a bit. He would advise me from time to time. I would go to his home, go to his backyard, sit in the yard, and he'd advise me about things and stuff. And I just loved this man. I really did. He was like a father to me. So my mother passed away in those period of time, and he had a dress factory like my family had at one point when I was younger. He hired some of my family when my family retired. They were in his factory. So I had a lot of love for him. I grew up with his son. I knew his daughter well. I didn't really deal with her too much, but I knew her from younger days, and I knew his wife. I mean, she would light up when I would come in. You want coffee? You want this? You want that? Yeah, she was. They were great people.
So you said, obviously, when you spoke about the hit with him, did you get a feeling that he was disappointed that you were involved, or was he just a bit too? Was he too tired for it all now?
I think he's against the principle of what we did. Like I said, breaking the rule of Cosa Nostra. He was up in age, was tired. I think he was concerned for me a lot. But you can't change these things once they're done. So he sat and advised me many, many times about a lot of things. Like I said, anytime I had problems in life, he was there for me. So I can't remember a time, that I had a problem that he wasn't there. So, or trying to be there. I think he was disappointed that I was involved, but it's too late. You're done. Now you're fighting a war. So he was a realist, and I think he said, "It's nothing I could say or do. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna encourage him. I'm gonna teach him. I'm gonna give him my wisdom." That's what he was doing. But I don't think he liked it. I don't ever think he liked it. No, he didn't think it was a good thing. And he always, in the back of his mind, I know he always felt that everybody's going to pay the piper for that sooner or later.
Did Toddo ever share his thoughts on John Gotti with you at all, or did he not speak out of turn like that?
Oh, no. Listen, he always talked to me about everything. He didn't really put him down, but he said all that flash, all that bullshit is going to work against him and against all of us. That's the worst thing he could possibly do. And he would tell me how the old man, Carlo Gambino, conducted himself and carried himself and stuff like that. He'd bring up old people, the life, the rules of the life. It's a brotherhood. It's a secret society. Things like that. He thought that John was making a serious mistake. Not that he hated him, but that he was making a serious mistake at what he was doing. And then result, Toddo was right again. He obviously destroyed himself and a lot of people around him, the mob. He put the whole fucking mob on Front Street. So history will show, and it does. There's been shows, the Netflix show, How to Be a Boss, and I watched that show on Netflix. It was the #1 show, and it said he was the worst. He broke every rule you're supposed to. Whatever you're supposed to be, he wasn't. He broke every rule. So he's literally like the worst boss you could be. Not that he wasn't sharp or tough or this or that, good looking or dressed nice, all of those things. Yeah, he's all of that. But that's not what we are. We're not actors. We're not out in the public. It's a secret society. I think he forgot that 100%. Giving autographs. I mean, I can't picture somebody when I was in the life coming over and asking me for an autograph. I would say, why? Why do you want my autograph? Who the fuck am I? Oh, what would they tell me? You're the underboss? And I would tell them, no, I'm not. I would never admit to it. I would never give an autograph Not because I think who I am. I give autographs now, left and right, selfies, whoever comes to me, because I think that people want, you're public and they want to do it. So I do it. Not to be like my shit don't stink. I'm not going to do it. But I wouldn't do it then because it's just not. I'm not. I'm a gangster. I'm quiet. I don't want to dress up like John dressed up. I had the money to, and I could have been a little more flashy, but I try to play it by the rules as much as I could.
So, Sammy, you became captain, and then shortly later in 1987, you became consigliere, and then following that, underboss. You were succeeded by Big Louis Valerio. You mentioned that he was your choice.
Yes, I went to John when I was going. I was the acting consigliere for a while, and then I became, recognized as the official consigliere. And John said, "Who do you want to replace you?" And I said, Big Louis Valerio. He's loyal. He's a tough guy, good guy. He knows the whole crew. He's been with Totto before Totto stepped down, so he was the perfect fit.
So at this time, then Totto's now stepped down as a soldier. Was he still active in any way, or was he kind of semi-retired?
He was semi-retired, but like I said, he would come down, he would talk to me, or I'd go to the house and talk with him. But he was basically semi-retired. He was up in age. He wasn't feeling well, so he was comfortable now in that position. He knew that his son was under me. He knew I grew up with his son. He knew his son was safe with me. Um, so he was real comfortable with the whole thing.
Even when you were underboss and consigliere, did you still turn to Toddo? And did Big Louie, could he turn to Toddo for advice as well?
I don't know if Louis had too much connections with Totto. Totto really retired when I went up even further and Louis went in. I would turn to him once in a while, not so much for advice, but just to see him, say hello, stuff like that. A couple of times I would bring, like pastries and stuff when I was down Little Italy and I went to Ferrara's. I knew cookies and stuff that he loved. I would buy a couple of dozen. I knew the wife good. So I would go there. I would ring the bell. He was mostly home. He really aged quite a bit. And I would bring him cookies and stuff like that. We'd sit down and have a cup of coffee on his back porch. And so, it wasn't so much advice. It was just like going to see my father. I had
Yeah.
nothing to do. I want to go see him, kill an hour or two or whatever. We did that for a while. And then it got so hot, I actually stopped with that. So, and I didn't see much of him anymore, but it took a while.
Finally, and you kind of touched on this before, after you became a government witness, did word ever reach you about what Toddo thought of you cooperating? I think you mentioned earlier that he would have probably been heartbroken, but didn't actually ever say a bad word about you. But did word ever actually reach you at all about what he felt about it, or nothing at all?
I I said, before, and I'll say it again, is that word did reach me that he never said a bad word about me. Matter of fact, the only thing I ever was told, somebody had said, you know, he didn't blame you for cooperating. He blamed John. He said John betrayed him, and Sammy's that way. You fuck with him, he's gonna come back at you, and that's what happened. If John didn't do what he did, Sammy would have never cooperated. I had him under me. He had a double murder. He was robbing tires. He was doing this. He was doing that. He had three fucking cases. The government went to him left and right. He was facing a double murder. He never flipped. I know this kid inside out. He said, but if you betray him or you fuck with him or you come at him, he's going to come back at you. So that's the way he felt. I told you what happened when they went to Charlie to kill me. Charlie's attitude towards them is fuck you. Do it yourself. I love the guy. Now, you really can't tell your boss that, but he did. And I heard that from people, quite a few people. And so that's the only things I ever heard from him. Then he passed away years later, quietly, and Charlie Boy as well. Charlie Boy is dead too now. But he died way later than Totto. But and I never heard from the daughter. I would assume that the wife passed away as well. She was way older than me, too. I never heard about her dying, but I'm sure she is dead. And the daughter, I don't think she was too much older than me. She could be alive, I'm not sure, but I never heard from her. See, like Peruda's daughter, I heard from. A lot of people's daughters or sons, I heard from. I still do. I still talk with them on occasion. One of my guys, Johnny Holmes, he wasn't a May guy, wasn't Italian, tough bastard, was with me. He was with me with a lot of different hits, different things. I hear from his daughter. I'm friendly with her. I put her in touch with some of my people and to help her out. And so I hear from a lot of them, and I hear from a lot of guys too. So, you know, there's a lot of guys who never got hurt by me. My deal was when I cooperated, I wasn't going to cooperate against my family, my crew, because I told the government, I said, listen, I cannot, I ordered them to come on a hit. I can't sit there and put them away. I can't do it. And they said, we can't make you that kind of a deal, but here's the deal we can make. We're giving you a 2-year deal. Anybody we indict in the 2 years, you have to cooperate. Anybody after the 2 years, you're on your own. Make up your own mind. So after the 2 years, I never cooperated again. I never cooperated against any of them. And I think a lot of them are out there, and they know it.